recorded.
Amazing. Hello, everybody. I am Tawny. Thank you so much for taking time to either watch this live or catch the replay. This is an exciting day for me because this is a topic that I just love. I love to help spiritually curious people explore whole healing. And to me, that is the physical, the body being the physical, the spiritual, the soul, and the emotional body. This particular topic is something that I started learning about way back in 2003. I took my very first Reiki 1 training. If you've got a microphone on, could you mute it for me, please? And I took that training in 2003, and it opened my eyes to a whole world I didn't know existed. Hey, Benjamin, thanks for letting me know. Ooh, Drayton Valley, awesome. Some Alberta in the house. It's great to see all of my different lives of places I've lived turn up on a webinar. Thanks so much for letting me know. And as we go along, I will do my best to keep up on the side with the chat bar, but if I miss it, we will go over them in the replay. So let's get going on what are these chakras. There's different ways to say it. Some people say chakra, some people say chakra. I think it all just depends on who you've been taught by. In the yoga world, I was taught by my mentors to pronounce the CH as a hard sound, so it's pronounced chakra in that world. And I usually use that pronunciation, but the beauty behind all of this is it's open to interpretation, and it's all about being intentional based. So that being said, I want to just clarify right out of the gate, any of the information I give to you today is not to replace the advice of a medical doctor. You must check with your own licensed medical practitioner before you take on any new exercise, try eating any new foods, or take on any type of herbs or herbal medicine. These are all energetic ideas to give you some opportunities to ask deeper questions, but do not replace any information from any of your medical practitioners. So with that legal point out of the way, let's dive in. There's many chakras in our body, but a lot of the times we focus on one of two systems, which is the 7 system or the 12 system. So for today, we're going to focus on the 7, which is the rainbow body. And I kind of like to look at it as a straw. So I try to imagine like a really thick straw going right up the center of my body, as if it starts right at the base of my tailbone and comes all the way out at the crown of my head. So coming down towards the bottom, it starts with red, it moves up to orange, then into yellow. When we get to the heart, it can be a little bit confusing. You might see green or pink. We'll talk a bit more about that later. And then eventually coming up into the throat being a blue. The third eye can be, again, a little confusing with indigo or purple or pink, and then into the crown, which can embody a lot of the same colors as the third eye. On this webinar, we're going to work on chakra 1, 2, and 3. We're not going to go, and 4, sorry, right up to the heart. We're not going to go into the higher chakras, but I will do a second webinar because there was a lot of interest. So that's super exciting. When we talk about these chakras, the lower ones, the first chakra, second chakra, and third chakra, they are about our survival. They are where we work through our survival instincts, and it's the beginning stages or the foundations of how we get into spiritual adulthood. The heart is the bridge. So the heart becomes this bridge between the learning we have in our self-identity and who we want to journey in higher consciousness and embody in our symbolic sight. So in order to get to these higher ones, we rely on the lower ones finding their balance. So I sent out a request, like when you signed up for this webinar, what was it that you wanted to know? And most people wanted to know how to tell if a chakra was out of balance. They wanted to know how to balance it if it was out of balance. And there was a lot of other questions. So I'm going to do my best to address most of them in here. And if I miss them or you have more questions, go ahead and put them in the side chat. And at the end of the day, I'll go back if I miss being able to get to them now. I'll go back and we can answer them on social media. So you can stay tuned to my social media pages and I can keep answering questions. So when I like to look at the chakras, the word itself is in Sanskrit, and Sanskrit predates religion. It's a Vedic language. So that to me is inspiring. So I was raised Roman Catholic, and I don't resonate with a lot of the practices within Catholicism anymore, but there's a lot of beautiful teachings that have definitely contributed to who I am and are still to this very day a part of my spiritual practice. And so I really love the work of Carolyn Mace, and she has dedicated a lot of information to explaining that you can look at these chakras in multiple words. For the most part today, I'm going to be using the word chakra, but if this is something that's totally new to you and you're more familiar with perhaps the sacraments of the Christianity or maybe even the Jewish Kabbalah, I'll also make a little bit of a reference. So the first chakra is connected to baptism, and in the Kabbalah, it's Keter. So what is going on here is all about our identity, and it's about our identity with our families and how we look at ourselves as an individual, as a species, and where we find security. And so it's security within ourselves, but also security within our society. So it's when you think of it as being our instincts and our self-preservation, and if it's more than just about us and it's about our connection to everything, you can understand how it could easily get rocked. Most of the time, this particular chakra is overactive. In the majority of people, this particular chakra is overactive, and a lot of that has to do with our cultural programming. In order to find safety, we have to discover loyalty, and we have to figure out what is safe to be loyal to. When we're talking about having a out of balance chakra, there's ways that this can manifest in our physical body as well as in some of our emotional actions. And so when we talk about how do we know in our own body, there's a couple of ways. So the practice of Reiki helps us go through and use energy with the power of intention to scan the chakras. So we go through and we scan the chakras, and we're looking to see where we can feel energy flowing differently. Everybody intuits a little bit differently, but the basis is intention. That doesn't help you if you know nothing about Reiki. So there's ways to start developing a little bit of self-awareness, or trying out journaling and coming to an idea of looking for where some of this is perhaps turning up in your life. So the main physical area for the root chakra, it starts with red, and chakra is like a spinning wheel is what it means. And it's usually depicted as that. And each one of them technically works on its own. However, they're all interconnected. So if you think at the very base of your spine, the very tip of your tailbone, that's about where the root chakra starts. And it is represented by the earth element. Its shape is a cube, and it's associated with group power and smell. So those are all associated with them. Now, each chakra also gets into a sound. It has a seed syllable and a frequency. And I'm not going to get into the sounding of it today, but there's a whole bunch of ways that you can work with this chakra. The ability to stand up for oneself is connected to that tailbone area. And so when we think of where that lands in our body, that's where you'll start to see physical, or the potential for physical manifestations in the form of pain. Now, our body, in my opinion, is always giving us information. The challenge is, can we step aside and look at that with awareness instead of with judgment? Can we look at the layers underneath the pain or sensations and find out what our body is trying to communicate to us? In the root chakra, it'll communicate to us in the tailbone region. It'll communicate to us in the adrenals, the base of the spine, our feet, our legs, and our large intestine and our immune system. So those are all areas that an imbalance can start to turn up if it were to manifest physically. Some of the things you might notice that can be associated with an imbalance in the root chakra are ADD and ADHD, anorexia, hemorrhoids, knee issues, autoimmune conditions, definitely adrenal fatigue. Let me think here. Speaking of autoimmune, fibromyalgia, there is brain fog and anxiety that can also be associated, all just with this particular chakra. And when we think of addictions, this particular chakra is usually associated with an addiction to sex or attention. So it's really interesting. Those are some ways you can sort of see what do you find yourself, what patterns do you see turning up in your life, and what physical sensations are you feeling? When the root is overactive, we always feel like we're under attack. It always feels like something's coming at us that we can't handle. And there may actually not be any real threats, but we're really, really in survival mode all the time. This can really take a toll on our digestive tract and our feelings of feeling supported. So a lot of money issues land in the low back, and this is connected to that sense of safety. We all live in a world where money is important in a sense that it is an energetic currency that helps us get things and helps us achieve a sense of safety. But our view on how much money we need can get skewed based on the root chakra. So working with the root chakra is one of the first places to start with finding what safety means to you within working the energy currency of money. If your root chakra is underactive, you might be then feeling disconnected from the earth. It may feel like brain fog, like your head is up in the clouds, like you're not in your body. So those are sort of the overactive and the underactive aspects of the root chakra. So what can you do if you're feeling any of those or noticing any of that? I, for the root chakra, usually work with a lot of the same technique for balancing, and grounding is one of the number one. For me, in yoga, I use mountain pose. It's about finding safety within. I also recommend a gratitude. So a small gratitude practice where you can find gratitude around what you have so that you can start to evaluate what is making you feel safe. As in, I'm grateful for my bed, I'm grateful for the door that locks to my room, or I'm grateful for the door that locks to my house, I'm grateful for the city that I live in. Just looking for ways that you can find gratitude in what you already have. I'm grateful that I have 4 pairs of clothes. There's lots of different ways you can work on that, but sometimes just bringing your focus back into what you already have can help with that. We also want to, look at, okay, if we're giving gratitude for what we do have, where are we not feeling safe? Where do we need to reevaluate what safe means to us? And what action do we need to take for self-agency, self-responsibility to change our situations? Of course, I'm speaking broadly right now and trying to give you some ideas and some tips of what this can look like when it turns up in your body. When we look at essential oils, I usually work with patchouli. Patchouli is my #1 favorite oil for the root chakra, as well as sometimes I like frankincense. I really like myrrh as well for the root chakra. Crystals, I love to work with obsidian, smoky quartz, red jasper. I also am a big fan of Picasso jasper for the root chakra, garnet, and I think those are the main ones I usually work with. Foods, you can also work with foods. So things like eating root vegetables, especially beets and radishes or purple cabbage. And you can wear colors. So you can wear red and find ways to wear red. It can be your undergarments, it could be a scarf, just trying to surround yourself with more red, getting a red Kleenex box and having that in an area that you're going to see it a lot to keep reminding you that you want to be working with that red energy. If there's any questions on the root chakra right now, could you drop them in the chat box there for me? And that will help me keep the questions sort of specific, and I'll do my best if we have a second to answer them. One of the other things that oils is cedar. I like to work with cedar oils. So a huge part of grounding practices and finding that safety within for me is realizing our connection to the earth and getting back in tune with earth rhythms, walking barefoot, even if it's just in the house, and definitely getting outside. So the earth and that connection to the earth can help us remember, what we're here and what we're attached to. So those are some of my things around the root chakra, the Muladhara, which means the base. Nobody's typing in any questions right now. Hopefully the pace is okay. I've got so much information for you guys. I get so excited about these chakras. I just want to make sure that I get it all out to you. But if I'm talking too fast, someone just let me know, and I'll try to slow down a bit. So the next chakra, so we started with the base of the spine. We come up, and a lot of people will start to see red or a ruddy red start to morph into orange, or some people it's just already bright orange. This is where we start to get into the second chakra. And this is the place of the self. It is governed by the element of water, and it's represented by the pyramid. This is an interesting one for me. This is my favorite one. I don't think we're supposed to have a favorite, but ultimately I have an amazing mentor from Alberta, actually, who taught me that many of us have a dominant chakra. So many of us have, if you're looking at symbolic sight or spiritual sight, we might have some soul learning. And that soul learning can also be related to archetypes or chakras. And so the one that I resonate the most with for me is the second chakra. Sure, you could use bloodstone with the root chakra. I use it with the third chakra, Leslie. But what I always say to people is if that's what you're drawn to, there's a really good reason for it. So go with it. That's a great question. Thank you. The second chakra is where we come to terms with our sensuality and our sexuality. It's also, though, where we have our passion and our enthusiasm. So it's about co-creation. So it's not just about sexual creation. It's about the energies within us between the masculine and the feminine, how they come together to work in harmony, and how we go forward from passion, how we create and turn up of service in the world. It's about finding our flow, and it is about coming into balance with pleasure and allowing ourselves to enjoy the pleasures of the earth. And that's a big part of this particular chakra. It's also connected to our creativity and our fluidity, and about bringing abundance in flow and in harmony. This particular chakra is also got a lot of learning around healthy boundaries, and I'm smiling there because I mentioned that this is one that I resonate a lot with as my life learning, and about being able to give and receive equally. So it's got a lot to it. The location that it covers is as you come up from the red, from the base of the spine, and get up towards the pelvic floor and into the hips and the entire reproductive area. That is where all of this orange light fills up. And it's the organs that are predominantly governed by this chakra as well. So if you are going to see physical manifestations, they're predominantly going to be in any of the sex organs, in the kidneys, the low back, and that triangle of the sacrum. That's interesting because the actual physical body has a triangle for where the sacrum is, and the bones are together, and the symbol for this chakra is the pyramid. So I always find things like that fascinating. This one is connected to the sacrament of communion, and to the sacrament, to the Kabbalah, it's Bina and Hukma, which has both a masculine and a feminine aspect, which I love. I love when we look at the different traditions, how they can have so many similarities, meaning, you know, if this chakra is about this co-creation and this masculine and feminine coming together, I love that another spiritual text also speaks of it in its own terms of two energies coming together into union, and union being in the word communion, you know, coming together. So it's an amazing, for me, it's an amazing awareness just to see how interconnected these things are. So the possible symptoms if this particular chakra gets out of balance, you guessed it, it's all going to be related to the sex organs, and it's going to be related to the kidneys. So you're looking at yeast infections, kidney infections, PCOS, cervical cancer, ovarian cysts. What else might come up here? Those are the main ones. Endometriosis will come up, fibroids will all come up. And a lot of it can also come out, you can see an imbalance or feel an imbalance, better is the word, in if you're feeling numb, numbness, and I mean that in an emotional sense. If you're feeling emotionally unstable and suffering or unable to hold emotional boundaries or sexual boundaries, that can all be completely related to a second chakra imbalance. And the common craving or the common addiction here is sugar and alcohol. Those are the main one, and food can be another big one for addictions when the second chakra is out of balance. What happens is if our second chakra is overactive, we sort of fall into this like overindulgence, like I deserve this pleasure, and that can come in the form of, you know, eating too much food, too many desserts, and that's why sugar is so closely associated, and the same thing with alcohol. So that's how you can see the second chakra sort of appearing as overactive. You might also see a lot of guilt. People with second chakra overactive might feel an immense amount of guilt, have hormone imbalances, a lot of restlessness. Loneliness can be a big part of this chakra. It also, when it's overactive, can come out as manipulation, you know, using that second chakra power to manipulate others or disempower others. And we can also, with this one, fall into the trap of always thinking there's something wrong with the people we love. So it's interesting. That's all kind of associated with it being overactive. And that's the more common aspect that you'll see with the second chakra. But if it's underactive, you might see people who like work themselves to the bone and have no joy. They never make time for joy. They never make time for slowing down. They never make time for stillness. And I think it's important in this one to also mention that we're dynamic beings. We're never just, you know, one way. So we can go through various times where the chakras are overbalanced, underbalanced, overbalanced, underbalanced. We're dynamic. We're always experiencing things in our life. And so they're always changing. So these give us some great reference points to start looking and tapping into self and becoming more familiar with what we might be experiencing in our body as signs, as information about where we might want to draw our attention to when it comes to rebalancing. Some of the ways that I work with rebalancing this chakra is tuning into the feeling body. So I mentioned that I'm a dominant second, and I really resonate with that. So for example, before I go to eat something, I will ask myself, like, is this actually going to make me feel good? Or body, is this what you really want? And honestly, it's a lot to do with intention. So if I really want that cupcake, because I legitimately just want that cupcake, how that vibration will land in my body is very different to my chakra is completely imbalanced. I need sugar at all costs because I'm not feeling well inside. I'm not holding my boundaries well. So I'm going to eat this cupcake to make me feel better. It lands very differently in the body. So I ask my body, is this what is going to really make me feel good? Is this what I really need? And the hardest part is that my body answers and I don't always listen. So sometimes my body will say no, and I eat the cupcake anyways. I'm sure many people can relate to that. But the way that we improve that practice is by getting more in tune with actually hearing what our body says so that we know what it's saying. And again, doesn't mean we're always going to listen, but it gives us more opportunity and more chance to listen. The second chakra is about creation. So creating anything, it could be music, it could be art. It's whatever creating means to you. For me, I'm not very artistic, but I love to create ideas. So creating can be content, for example. It could be writing. Whatever creation means to you is unique to you, but that can really help you bring balance into the second chakra. Taking time for stillness. Stillness is really important for the second chakra. One of my favorite yoga poses to work with this is supported bridge pose with a 3-part breath called the Durga breath. You can YouTube those poses or reach out to me, and maybe I'll do a couple of social posts on what they look like. But finding that stillness and reconnecting to the breath and that flow of breath in the body, that's a great way to restore or balance out this second chakra. And are you nourishing yourself? What does nourishing yourself mean to you? Are you getting healthy foods, enough sleep, taking some stillness, finding joy? Are you making a little bit of time for some of those things? The oils I usually work with for this chakra are ylang ylang. That's a really powerful oil. It's a really strong smell, so just a bit of caution on that. Sage, clary sage, and mint actually are both good for this guy. Plant-wise, the marigold family, calendula, any of the orange lilies are all great. Raspberry leaf for women and raspberries are all great. Of course, eating oranges, anything orange, wearing orange, working with orange. This is also the water element as I manage. So walking next to water can be a great way to tune in to the second chakra or listening to water meditations. What else can I tell you? The crystals that I work with are carnelian, orange calcite, sunstone. What else do I like to work with? Sometimes moonstone. Oh, and Leslie, I use bloodstone here too. So I feel like bloodstone can work really well with the first, second, and third chakras. I actually use it a lot to anchor in that particular area. Sometimes I'll work with rhodonite as well when I'm working on the second chakra, just to bring in a little bit of heart energy as well with working through here. Any questions around that second chakra? If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the box about that second chakra now, and I will be happy to try to answer a couple of questions on that. Oh, another great plant is nasturtium. Those are plants that you can grow and you can actually eat them. They have a really beautiful flower. They act as pest control in your garden, especially if you're growing things like cabbages. Nasturtium is really great to plant between your rows, and the flowers are edible in salads, and they're really pretty, and they're a great one for the second chakra. Okay, let's keep going. So moving into the third chakra, the solar plexus. So this is symbolized by fire and the fire element. It's a little bit of a faster energy, and it's represented by a circle. It is, I'm going to stand up. It's right here. It's right in that solar plexus area, right where the two ribs meet. And it has it has a little bit of a faster energy than the lower two chakras, which is kind of fun. It is represented in the Christianity sacraments as confirmation and as Neza and Hod in the Jewish Kabbalah. So that's kind of interesting to dive into, because it's really affected by how we grow up in puberty. So the third chakra is where we develop our self-confidence. And so it's a lot about our self-identity. And what's fascinating is that even though our looks and the way we appear are sort of a superficial or an illusionary way of looking at ourselves, we need to find acceptance with that before we can move up into our spiritual adulthood. So even though we don't want to get stuck in ego or egoic or narcissistic sort of tendencies, it is important that we find an acceptance with who we are and identify with who we are, so that we can then birth our personal power. And that really comes here in the third chakra. This is where we learn about vulnerability and surrender. And of course, that takes courage. And it's also then about where we discover our gut feelings, authenticity, and integrity. So this is a beast of learning that happens in this third chakra. And I find this fascinating too, that this is, the idea of chakras comes from Eastern traditions, but we don't really celebrate our rites of passage anymore of aging. And this particular chakra is really, really affected by that rite of passage into puberty. Just like our second chakra is also really affected by our childhood. It's the second chakra being where all of our emotions are, and it's all about how we feel. So if we don't live in situations where we can freely communicate how we feel, then we have to learn that as adults. And it's the same thing here with the third chakra. If we didn't have help or a great opportunity to find our personal power and I find self-acceptance at a younger age, then it may be something we need to work on as an adult to bring this chakra into balance. People who have this imbalance are usually confident. They're a joy to be around. They seem to have a bit of tranquility to them, which is fascinating because, again, even though this is like a faster moving energy, it is about raising the vibration, yet it's about raising that vibration in a peaceful way, with like an inner knowing kind of way, sort of like a cat ready to pounce, where it's like you're sitting there so still and yet you could take action in any moment. So it has a lot to do with our stamina as well, and yeah, self-acceptance and how we relate and understand others around us as well. So we have to work on this chakra again to get into our psychic abilities. It starts here. The more we work on this chakra, the more in tune we get as we move into the higher chakras with understanding our gut feelings and really activating our psychic sites, which I think is super cool because this chakra is associated with sight. So the root chakra was associated with smell, the second chakra is associated with touch, and this one is associated with sight. So I find that fascinating because it is also the gateway to our spiritual sight. This area of the body that it governs is your digestive tract, your spleen, pancreas, gallbladder, the liver, the entire digestive tract, and also your gums. So it's a lot to do with a lot of the filtering organs, really, where we can store some of that negativity or some of that anger. And if it's out of balance, you might start to see things like diabetes turn up, arthritis, hypoglycemia, Crohn's, bloating, a lot of digestive troubles turn up in here, and appendicitis. So those can all be physical manifestations when this chakra is consistently out of balance. And from an emotional standpoint, it can turn up as over-compulsive when it comes to cleanliness or details, like over-compulsive attention to details. It can turn up as like being really timid or really shy. It can turn up in the opposite. It can also turn up as rage and anger. You'll notice this one, usually the addictions that go with it are to caffeine, like to caffeine and bread. And a lot of it, when it's out of balance, can also be to do with either powerlessness, which is like almost having no control of self, or it can go the other way, which is like totally trying to control others. The overactive aspects, you'll usually see it as someone who tries to micromanage. They may be really greedy, lack compassion, lack empathy, really quick to anger or berate others, really intolerant, overly sarcastic, usually no sense of accountability, like they're always willing to blame somebody else. This can be where you start to see passive aggressive, where they always want to get their way. And if it's the other way, if it's underactive, that's where you start to see the indecisiveness, neediness, feeling really insecure, really timid. They can often turn up as being like really unreliable, really confused, often overly concerned about what others think about them, to the point that it inhibits their ability to do anything or take action. And a lot of fear about the future, a lot of fear around trying new things, a lot of fear of being wrong. That can all be an underactive third chakra. So for this one, the oils, my favorite essential oil for the third chakra is bergamot. It's hands down my favorite. And I also use juniper or lemongrass. Yoga poses for this, my favorite is Peaceful Warrior. But I also love to do a meditation for this one, where you visualize a ball of love in front of you and then sending that love to the room, and then to the neighborhood, and then to the city, and then to the province or the state, and then to the country, and then to the world. So it's a beautiful practice of like taking that energy, picturing it maybe as that yellow ball of light and watching it grow and grow and grow and grow. I find that really, really helpful, especially for underactive, but I think for me it works for both. And again, reminder that we're static beings, so we're always going through ebbing and flowing of this. Crystals, I usually work with tiger's eye, citrine, yellow calcite, pyrite. Those are the ones that I typically work with the most for the third chakra. And what else do I like to do with here? Plant-wise, peppermint and marshmallow. Eating-wise, oats and lemons and squash, ginger and turmeric. Those are a lot of the things that I like to work with for this one. Sunflower and citrine. I don't know if I mentioned citrine. That's a big one for the third chakra. Any questions about the third solar plexus? The Manipura, which means lustrous gem. Any questions at all on that? Okay, well, it looks like I'm going to go over the 30 minutes a little bit because I just want to get to the heart chakra because this is really, it starts to get fun. Well, there's a lot of, well, they're all fun to me, but I just don't want to stop talking about them. I guess that's what it comes down to. So the fourth chakra is the heart chakra. This is where we get into the heart, the anahata. So we start to, like I said, this is where we grow up. This is where we really start to grow up and move into our spiritual growth. Here it is associated with the sacrament of marriage, or in the Kabbalah, Tiferet, which is compassion. The name for this is anahata, unstruck or unhurt chord. So it's about pure sound. It's associated with the air element, and it's symbolized by a cross and by touch. So here what we move into is heart-centered spirituality. There's a lot of belief, if you've just tuned in.
Can I hear her?
Can you mute your microphone there for me, Becky?
Not here.
Awesome. There we go. Sorry. There we go. So when we get into this chakra, we're talking about rising above fear. So we want to take all of the learning from the lower chakras, which there's beauty in. So we learn about loyalty, we learn about honor, we learn about integrity. We want to take those learnings, those are the higher aspects of them, and as we move into our spiritual growth in the heart, then we start having compassion and understanding, and we start by loving ourselves first, and we've worked through this identity of who we are, and then we can move up into the heart. It's depicted by green, but also by pink, and the reason for that, there's lots of reasons, but the one that I usually resonate the most with is the low heart and the high heart. So the high heart is usually represented by pink and is part of the 12 chakra system, and the lower heart, or the main one that we see in the 7 system, is usually depicted by green. So that's kind of how it works. And remember, this is like holographic going through you. The heart is our true, it's like the engine of our car. It's like everything has to come through the heart to go wherever it is. And some people believe that as we're moving through what is called the ascension process, or this sort of evolution of humanity, we are almost making the heart the new root, meaning we're taking all of our action from the heart, which I find really inspiring and really beautiful. So if we are looking at the heart, it's all about finding play. It's about remembering magic, and it's about unconditional love and forming interdependent relationships. It's about self-love, it's about forgiveness, and it is about a willingness to help others, but not at the sacrifice of self. So it's a willingness to help others with the ability to say no. It's where we really begin to rise above a lot of our shadow aspects and take that learning and go forward in life. The heart chakra is in that whole rib area. So it does govern the lungs, the heart, the ribs, the thymus, the hands, the arms, the breasts, all of that whole region. And so it's not just the front, and that's an interesting piece. It's the front and the back. The chakras are both front and back. The things you might notice in a body, if it was a physical manifestation, could be things like Raynaud's system, which is poor circulation. You could see high or low blood pressure, blood clots, heart attacks, breast cancer, varicose veins, pneumonia, asthma, blood disorders, any kind of bronchial trouble can all be completely connected to the heart chakra. The common addiction here is usually to do with numbing, and marijuana and cigarettes usually come up as some of the main addictions to this particular area. And a lot of it has to do with possibly feeling like a loss of personal boundaries, shut down to joy, always putting other people first. And if it's turning up sort of as overactive, it can come out as being demanding, jealous, overbearing. Sometimes it can come out as feelings of martyrdom. It can come out as being, sort of flaky because they take on so much and don't know how to say no, that they're always breaking down themselves. The other ways that it can kind of turn up is sort of being really critical or really judgmental, really fearful, and antisocial, believe it or not, can also come up. When it's underactive, it's usually where we see a lot of depression. And in most people, the heart chakra is underactive because of heartbreak. So a lot of us close off because of pain. We don't have great ways to move through pain, and we've been dealt some hard cards, and we close down. And so then we build these walls around us. So that can leave us feeling disconnected. Those are usually how underactive and overactive turn up. And so what can we do to balance the heart chakra? So the crystals that I usually work with are rose quartz, jade, emerald, green aventurine. Again, we'll work with rhodonite here. This is a great place that I like to work with rhodonite. I'll work with ruby here. I use geranium or rose if you can source rose oil, frankincense, sometimes neroli, sandalwood for this one. This particular area in yoga, I can't stress enough, my all-time favorite pose for this is a restorative pose. It's reclining goddess. The more you can open up your shoulders and open up your heart, the more opportunity you can move into opening back up to feeling. And it's not easy. Again, it can be really hard when we've been dealt a lot of heartbreaks to shift that. When I also want to work with herbs, I'll use hops, hawthorn berry, borage, yarrow, and for motherwort, elderberry, reishi. And then for the eating foods, apples, garlic, onions, anything to do with the cabbage family, like Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli. Those are the main ones that I usually work with. Yeah, and definitely apples. And the big way to work with the heart chakra is around rebalancing, loving yourself first. We need to be able to love ourselves first to love others, and we have to be able to forgive ourselves to forgive others. And so that is a huge piece in balancing out the heart chakra. And I think it's really important to say that it's a practice. So it's not something that happens overnight, balancing out these chakras, and it can take a lot of effort and combined effort and a lot of journaling and a lot of reflection and perhaps a lot of talking with other trusted professionals to really start to find the balance. And the more you gain awareness into how these things are turning up, the better questions you can ask about yourself. So you can go through and you can re-listen to this, or you can ask more questions or search out more information on ways that these chakras are turning up and out of balance. Or you can just start your own practice of, okay, I'm noticing some of these symptoms, or I'm feeling some of these emotions. What's going on in my life right now? What happened today? What happened yesterday? And start to sort of notice patterns in yourself, because understanding what's going on in you is the very, very, very first place. And I honestly find writing it down is hands down the best. So, I get it. If you're in a hurry and you're on the road, maybe put it in the notes on your phone, but writing it down and then going back and reflecting on it is where you start to really uncover where these imbalances are turning up in your life. Are there any other questions here at the end of the webinar that I didn't touch on for anybody? I tried to answer most of the things you all sent me in emails about how they turn up, what underactive and overactive looks like. So with all of this information, I like to take the wastebasket approach. If something I said just doesn't land for you, you just pick it up and you just throw it in the wastebasket. And you don't, it doesn't have, all of it doesn't have to resonate with you in any way, shape, or form. Again, if there's stuff that I didn't cover and you want me to answer it, you can fire it off to me in an email, or you can put it in the chats. And especially for those of you tuning into the replay, put it in the chats and I can try to cover it on socials, or if I can, I'll try to get back to you by email. One of my favorite ways to work with all of these chakras is using Reiki, and I love to do it with restorative yoga. So if you're in and around the London area, I do work one-on-one, and we can go deeper into a lot of these. If you're not in the London area, or you're just not even able to get in to see me, I definitely can offer coaching calls to do self-assessments with you and help you uncover one layer at a time where you're at in that moment and where you may want to be shifting. Those of you interested in actually becoming a Reiki practitioner, I have a course here in London, Ontario. We are doing Reiki 1 in February. It's February 21st. It's a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, full days on Saturday and Sunday. And we'll be doing Reiki 2 later into April. So this is like an overview of the chakras before we even get into Reiki. So it's a great starting point if it's new to you. I'll tell you that I read about the chakras almost all the time. There's seldom a week goes by that I'm not reading something. And no matter how many times I read the same text, I learn something. I learn something every time I look at them, whether it's in relation to myself or someone that I've come into contact with. So for me, it's a fascinating opportunity to constantly be growing, and another way to look at the way life manifests itself in each of us in this human experience. So I know that most of you who tuned in today are spiritual seekers. I'm going to gift you all a free affirmations. Affirmations are a great way to work with the chakras and a great way to move forward. So there'll be a PDF coming to you in your inbox, and I'll stay with you. So if you want to just keep moving through some great spiritual seeking content, I'll keep sending you some things for a few weeks and keep touching base. And I love hearing from you. So please do take the time to reply to the emails if they resonate, or there's a practice that really lands for you or you want to know more about. Other than that, if there's no other questions, I just want to say, I know you could have been watching Netflix or at work or with your families. There are so many other things that you could be doing right now, a million books on the 2020 resolution list, and you took time to listen to me. And I honestly, your time is the most important thing that you have. So I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And I'll just finish with my favorite yoga way of saying goodbye, which is just to say to all of you, may you always see the beauty within. May you always have the courage to choose love over fear. And may you always stay curious enough to follow the guiding light of your own heart. Namaste, beautiful people. Thank you for watching with me.